Well, there was a pastor that waited in line to have his car tuned up before a long holiday weekend. And the attendant worked quickly, but there were many cars ahead of him. And so finally, the attendant motioned him to pull into an available service store. "Pastor," said the young man, "I'm so sorry about the delay. It seems as if everyone waits until the last minute to get ready for a long trip." And the clergyman chuckled, "I know what you mean. It's the same in my business." Clergy humor. So I was telling Jane before the service what's really been up for me with some of the events that have happened in our community and also in my own life. Just this whole adventure called life and the nature of life and its impermanence. And when things don't go the way the way I want them to go, how that can be an opportunity for growth. And so as I was sitting with this week, a story came to me to share with you that happened in my life right around the time of my graduation from ministerial school. So it was 2009, and I was getting out of school after being in school for 3 years. And as they say down south, I was ridden hard and hung out wet, if you know what I mean. I mean, it was quite the experience. And so I wanted to do something special to commemorate this event. And so I was talking with my friends back here, because I was in Kansas, Missouri area. And my friend Lynn, who is a real travel, said, "Why don't we go on a trip? Where have you wanted to go?" And I went, "Really? I've always wanted to go to Paris. I mean, I love Paris." She goes, "Well, I think we could do that. Let's do that." So we're like, okay. And so we decided in April of 2010 that we would go to Paris. And so we're doing all of our research, and Lynn buys Rosetta Stone, and she's learning French. And of course, I'm trying to learn French and not massacre it, with my southern accent. And so we're all ready. We get new passports because our passports had expired, and we're ready to go. Well, unfortunately, those plans were redirected by a certain volcanic eruption in Iceland. Do you remember that in 2010? And although relatively small for volcanic eruptions, they caused enormous disruption to air travel across Western and Northern Europe over a period of like 6 days. And in response to the concerns that the volcanic ash would damage aircraft engines, the airspace of many European countries was closed, resulting in the largest air traffic shutdown since World War II. And so here we are. And so here's 2 days before I was supposed to fly down to Virginia, or out to Virginia, because we were going to fly to Dulles on Air France. And 2 days before, we had heard nothing, no cancellations. So we're like, okay. So I thought, I'll go ahead and just fly to Virginia. And by the time that I got here, it was looking pretty dismal that we were going to go to Paris. And so I'm like, okay. And I was really disappointed. But Lenny is like the eternal optimist, and she goes, "We are using our passports." So I'm like, okay. So we contact this travel agent of a friend of a friend of a friend, and we go over to her actual home. And to see if there's anywhere that we can go for a week or so, at least 5 days, where we can get a flight and a hotel. And let me tell you, we walk in this home, there's 3 dogs, the woman's cursing at her computer, we're just looking at each other like, what have we done? But we persevere, and she books us on a flight to Aruba. I know it sounds great, right? At this resort, we were going to go there, but you have to know that I am really not an island girl. I mean, I love the beach, but this is really close to the equator, and it's hot. And in my suitcase, I was planning for April in Paris, 60, 70 degrees, and so I'm like, okay, and our flight was the next day at 6 a.m. So I run over to Marshall's and buy some things, and I buy about as high a sunscreen as I can buy, and we head off to Aruba. And we spent 5 days in this resort, and it was really nice. All you could eat buffets and sunset cruises with dolphins. I mean, it was lovely. It wasn't Paris. And the people there were lovely. They speak 4 languages. Did you know? And it's a Dutch colony, and they speak English and Dutch, Spanish, and Papiamentu, which is their native dialect. And they were just lovely. To me, the people were what made the trip. But, it had me really look at this whole idea of when things don't go the way I want, how I handle it. And I know this is a trip, but, I think we can all relate to our own lives, how life has gone like this. We think we're going here, and all of a sudden it goes here. And what is ours to do? And, boy, it's called surrender. I know I had to surrender and just go with the flow and accept what is, and to be grateful, because at that moment, there were thousands of people stranded in Europe that could go nowhere. But it had me ask, how many times have I been redirected and been completely blessed by the experience? And I know that I've shared with you my biggest redirections pretty much in my life was when I applied to ministerial school in 2000. I'd only been in Unity 3 years, and I was like, yes, I'm going to be a minister. And they said, no thanks. I just thought, okay, the rug is now pulled out from under me. This was really awful. And at the time, my minister said to me, okay, and this is the one that has the screensaver that says, what is the truth you know and how steadfast are you in its application? Oh, I hate that. But she said, Sheryl, you've been redirected. That's what they call it in Unity, redirected. Instead of like, sorry, honey, out of here. You've been redirected. You've been redirected right now. And so what is yours to do is to find the blessings. Look for the good. And I got to tell you, folks, to this day, I find blessings from that experience. Because I had declared as one of my bucket list things that before I died, I wanted to get a master's degree. And I was in the first class that graduated with a 3-year master's degree at Unity. So the blessings just keep going. And so I just wanted to talk to you today about what do we do when life redirects us? Do we look for the good? Do we move with it? Or do we move against it? I love the John Lennon quote, life is what happens when we're making other plans. Redirection's a part of life, and everything hinges on our willingness to accept what is and surrender and move with it. Because think about it. Life is really a trip. Life is an adventure. And I don't mean a trip and fall. I mean a trip, a journey. And think about, ever since we were born, we've been venturing out. We had to venture out of the womb. We had to let go of crawling and then walk. We left home and we started school. And maybe, you might have, tried out for the football team or the cheerleading squad or theater or whatever, and maybe got redirected from that. And then we graduated and we went on, many of us went on to get married, have children, and we just think about our lives are constantly changing, folks. And it's amazing how, we might resist how change comes because I think we get in our heads, life is supposed to be here, 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 and here. But I'm sure if you look at your journey, it's gone here. So life is always moving forward. And so what would it be like if we added more venture? The word venture means risk, take a gamble. What would it be like for us to add venture to our lives? A little more, to get out of our comfort zone. There's this thing called a bucket list, and many of you saw that movie with Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, and I remember when I was coaching folks, people would say, I don't like this idea of a bucket list because that means you're dying. No, a bucket list means you have an awareness that life is impermanent. You have an awareness that this incarnation, this life that we are living right now, is finite. And we know the truth that life is eternal, but in terms of this body and this time and the relationships that we have and the family that we are, it's finite. And what are we doing with it? Are we resisting change? Are we resisting life's redirections? Or are we moving with them? So where could you add more adventure in your life? What's your bucket list? Do you want to go to Paris? By the way, I made it to Paris. Later. Yes, I did. But what's on your bucket list? Do you have a bucket list? Are there things that you really want to do? And what's in your way of saying, you know what? I'm going to make this more of a priority in my life. I'm going to allow myself to say yes. Maybe it's calling an old friend. Maybe it's taking a trip to Paris. Maybe it's opening your heart to fall in love again. What is it for you? And it might feel really awfully uncomfortable. But I promise you, it will bless you. And when you set the intention on life's journey to look for the good, to look for the blessings, you will find it, because that is one of our teachings. In Romans, Paul wrote, all things work together for good who love God. All things work together for good. Loving God metaphysically means, what does it take to love? Surrender and trust. To love. All things work for good when we say yes. So, are you going to make a list? Check it more than twice? Yeah, I just invite you this week to do some self-reflection. Reflect on where you've been redirected in your life and how maybe that was crushing. And to spend a moment or two or three on what's the good? What are the blessings that have come from that experience that are possibly still blessing your life right now? And what is yours to do to say yes to whatever's on your bucket list and to make it more of a priority? Because, folks, life is precious. It's now. It's here. Get curious. Claim your life adventure and know all things work together for good. You ready? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. All right, let's affirm together. I claim my life of adventure. And so it is. I can't wait to hear.